My name's Rebecca and this is Mahshid, and we're two of the family lawyers here at Connect Family Law. We were just talking about how it can be difficult to figure out who's going to keep the family pet, the family dog or the family cat or any pet that's become important to both spouses. Many of our clients wonder what the law is in this area, and I know, Mahshid, you were looking into that recently.
Yeah, I actually had a case that dealt with this. And so what I found was that the law basically treats pets like property. And what that means is when it comes to property, the law divides anything that was acquired during the relationship between the parties equally. But it's safe to say that you can't really divide a pet in half. So what are the factors that the courts look at? So the courts usually consider, who bought the pet, when was the pet acquired, and who was the registered owner of the pet. And they do acknowledge that pets are unique to a certain extent, and so they will consider some factors that they normally don't consider under property division. Not often, but they do that. And some of those factors include, who has a bond with that pet, a greater bond, and who took care of the pet after separation, or who was responsible for the training. And usually what they do then is they award the pet to one person or the other, and the spouse who doesn't get the pet gets some type of compensation. At the end of the day, though, again, pets are divided under the property regime, and they're not treated as unique.
So I just maybe add to that if the pet was owned by one of the partners prior to the relationship, or if it was gifted, if it was a gift just to one of the partners, then our law would see that as excluded property that wouldn't be shared. And so that one person would simply keep the animal unless for some reason the value of that animal's increased while the relationship's been going. Then they would potentially have to compensate for the other person. But crassly, the other person would have no rights to that pet if it was previously owned by one of the parties. What do you think about the way that the law deals with pets?
So I personally think that the law doesn't address the uniqueness of this situation, and how do you really justify giving compensation to one person and the pet to another when as a third party you don't really know the bond, you can't really quantify the bond of each individual, and it's a very hard thing to do. And let's be realistic, can any type of monetary value replace that pet? And for some people it can't. I mean, some people maybe, but usually it's the case where it can't. And I think that there needs to be recognition that pets they're not inanimate objects like the clothes we're wearing, or the house that you live in, but they actually they perceive things and they feel things, and so the law needs to address the uniqueness. And I don't think it does. Deciding that under the property division regime is adequate.
So, I get what you're saying. I get that people are attached to their animals. I've seen clients being willing to give up a ton of the money that they should have gotten for the family home in negotiating being able to keep their pet. But I do think we need to remember that the law is a blunt tool that can't cater to every circumstance. Some people may be particularly attached to a piece of art or jewelry or a family heirloom. And while I realize that pets are not the same as inanimate objects, I don't think that we can expect the law to deal with very unique circumstances and situations like that. If people want to make creative agreements about a pet, if they want to decide to share the care of the pet, or even to share the costs of the pet, even if one person is going to keep the pet with them, they're free to do so. They can do that in a separation agreement or a mediated agreement. And so in my mind, this is just one of the many reasons why clients who are going through separation should consider trying to resolve things through a mediated or separation agreement instead of relying on a stranger, a judge, to make decisions for your family with the law that has many limitations to it, and because it's such a blunt tool.
I get what you're saying, and I definitely agree to a certain extent. But I do want to comment on a couple of the points that Rebecca made here. And firstly, you noted that the law can't cater to each in every single circumstance, and that it's a blunt tool. And while that's true, I think that we come across these types of situations often enough where the focal point is, well, what's going to happen to the pet, right? And I think that there's enough of these examples and situations out there where the law should put some time or energy into determining, something that's going to adequately address those circumstances. And another comment you made about agreements. I mean, we're all for parties, resolving things outside of court, and it's fundamental and it's really important. And I think that it's something that the parties should try to do. And you're right. People can creatively come up with ways to address, the pet's needs and their needs without some random third person, right? But at the end of the day, I don't think that necessarily means that the law shouldn't also address the uniqueness of the situation and create some defined factors that look at how pets should be divided.
Well, I mean, we could banter this back and forth all day long. We're lawyers, right? But for you animal lovers out there, just so you know, I do have 2 pets myself, Shasta and Coda, 2 dogs. Do you want to see a picture of them?
Sure.
So if you are in a situation where you're not really sure how to handle a disagreement about a pet, we'd be happy to talk with you about this further and assist you in any way that we can.